Hi, and welcome to our second Monday Live with the ADHD Advocate. And today we're going to be talking about ADHD in families. And we have got Matt Travis here. And Matt is just about to begin working with the ADHD Advocate, and he is going to be specializing in coaching teenagers with ADHD, and he's got a lot of experience around supporting teenage boys, actually. So welcome, Matt, to our Monday Live.
Hello. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, everybody.
Yeah, so Matt understands very well, like I do, in terms of coaching kids, teenagers, and adults with ADHD, what it can be like for these individuals when they don't understand how their brain works, and the impact it has on them when others don't understand how their brain works, because it is very important for them and for those that work with them and support them to be able to look at them through an ADHD lens, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. So basically, ADHD is very much genetic. And what we've found, particularly when we are coaching a child with ADHD, quite commonly the adult, the parents got ADHD as well. It could be both parents. Now, the problem with this, as we know, as I know personally, parenting kids with ADHD, when you have ADHD too, is extremely challenging. It's really difficult for so many reasons. Firstly, executive function challenges. It's hard enough just remembering, individually where your keys are, what the day is even sometimes. And then you've got children with ADHD that need that extra support, that need you to kind of be their eyes and ears and help, keep them on track. So it puts a lot of pressure and increases the overwhelm on parents. And that, of course, is going to affect their parenting and their ability to pay attention and nurture their children. And that obviously will have, unfortunately, implications for those kids. Matt, have you found, I know you've worked mostly in the past with quite troubled teens. Yeah. What have you found has been the main challenges with them?
I'd say the main challenge was really their internal belief system. And just to say, yeah, I was working with at-risk young people, but I'd probably a high proportion of them did have ADHD, but some of them wouldn't have been. They would have had just probably trauma and different emotional difficulties. But I think, yeah, the biggest problem was their sense of self-efficacy and self-belief in what they were capable of doing in the world, especially because they didn't have the role models or a kind of external person to inspire them or support them. They often came from pretty broken families. So yeah, I would say their negative self-talk and what they think is possible for them was the biggest issue holding them back, amongst many other issues.
Yeah, it's definitely, and that's why I guess ADHD Advocate tagline, tell a new story, because it's very much the problem is the narrative that ADHDers tell themselves. And a lot of them aren't even not even aware of what we're saying to ourselves, but there's certainly that lack of hope, that hopelessness, because so many of these kids and teens with ADHD in particular, they want to please, right? That's part of the whole rejection sensitive dysphoria. We are people pleasers, many of us. They want to do the right thing. And the problem is there's so much that gets in their way. They're misunderstood so often. And then they just kind of lose hope and they give up, I've found. And that's where the danger, that's when things get very difficult for them. If there's no hope, no point. Because for an ADHD, when there's no point, there's absolutely no point.
Yeah, and with this particular group, if there was no point, then they could do things, they could break the law, they could do things that, will guarantee that they're in trouble for a long time and go to prison. And so sort of that internal monologue and dialogue with society in a way was very detrimental, but negative.
Yeah, and I guess the education system doesn't really help, does it, Matt?
No, because there's a concept of normal and what normal behavior should look like, and that a child should be able to sit down and learn in a certain way. And of course, all children are different in the way that they learn. Some are visual learners, some are kind of can learn by reading, some don't like reading, some are more sort of physically gifted. and yet, the school system just caters for one particular learning style. So then the person, particularly with ADHD, feels like they're failing. They're not able to learn in the way that's expected of them, and also creativity is not encouraged in schools. Creativity can seem almost like a threat because it's a challenge, perhaps, to the teacher who's just trying to sort of force feed in a way information to children that they have to just remember and then regurgitate back. But that's not really intelligence or real learning or understanding. And yet someone with ADHD, there's a high proportion of people with ADHD who are very creative and who have this kind of very sort of sensitive and high levels of perception and intuition. And that's not really valued at school. That can seem as almost a threat to the system.
Yeah, it's such a shame, isn't it? Because it's these kids, right? It's with those skills, those innate abilities that will really be able to contribute, innovate in society. A lot of the adults that we coach that at the top of their industry, they were the child that struggled at school, so many of them. And because ADHD is situationally variable, as Matt was saying, in education, there's no choice, no outlet. They have to learn in a certain way. They can't lean into their strengths. They don't know what their strengths are. And when they try and process, when they try and pay attention by maybe verbally processing, so maybe asking questions or moving around a bit, it's like detention straight away. So they can't access the things that will help them actually even learn and engage in the curriculum. So they're really set up to fail. But once they leave and like hopefully there are some that have their self-esteem intact, and usually that's because perhaps they've got family around them that believe in them, or maybe they do other things like sports outside of school that preserve their self-confidence, and then they go into an area or workplace that kind of suits them, that meets their needs and allows them to leverage their strengths, and then they fly. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen for every child, teen with ADHD.
Well, as you said, it's situationally variable, and also ADHD is, is interest based. So if there are topics that they're not interested in, so they might be fascinated by biology but kind of have no interest in math, for example, and it will look as if they don't care, they're not paying attention, they're completely distracted, and yet it's literally because the way that their brain is wired is that if that interest is not stimulated, then they are actually not able to pay attention in the way that a neurotypical child would be. So then they get blamed for that. And that, as Stephanie said, like can contribute to kind of low self-esteem and feeling of being sort of picked on, and then shame at not being able to keep up with their peers. And adolescence is a time where you're already feeling very sensitive to the opinions of your peers and the outside world. So any kind of thing that makes you feel different or abnormal or kind of less than in any way can trigger this quite damaging sense of shame.
Yeah, and that's what we found, that by helping these young people understand how their brain works, this unique brain wiring, that a lot of the things maybe that they do, they can't easily help. And it's very much a matter of helping them get out of their own way in order for them to be able to really lean into their strengths and to get the things done that they need to get done, and allow them to have that agency and be able to exercise that creativity. We do a lot of that in coaching. It's a bit of a fine balance though, because as I'm sure some of the parents would appreciate, sometimes when your child gets diagnosed, they may, they don't want to be different. Like Matt was saying, the last thing they want is that confirmation, oh, I am different. But so it is a certain way that we do it here. We're a very strengths-based approach to ADHD. And thankfully, neurodiversity on the whole, it is becoming a lot more acceptable. In fact, some people would even wager, it's a bit of a trendy thing now. But us with ADHD, we know better. Obviously, it definitely comes with its challenges. But it definitely does also can be a superpower in certain situations when you understand it and have the right support in place. So that's the crucial part is understanding, and not just your ADHD, but yourself, right? Your strengths, and then helping the individual with ADHD really lean into those strengths and choose the right situations for themselves as much as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, it can be difficult though in the context of a whole entire ADHD family. We've found that it's really important that parents as well need to understand their child, because these kids, you know, again, because of the rejection sensitive dysphoria, and the opposite of that is recognition responsive euphoria. And, you know, in the home and at school, so both teachers and parents, when they can understand that wiring and be able to see the strengths and really advocate, set that child up for success, then that child thrives. And that's what definitely needs to happen. More understanding, more of that lens, helping the child with ADHD not only understand their wiring, but accepting, and ultimately what we strive to do here with our coaching, helping them embrace it, embrace those strengths, and be able to choose those situations as much as possible and advocate for themselves, because that's another difficult thing that ADHDers find, asserting themselves, explaining themselves, and in an emotionally regulated way. Have you found that, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very misunderstood condition, and I think that the biggest damage can be is if it's perceived as a kind of willful oppositionality, or laziness, or just not caring, or not thinking about other people. And this can obviously manifest in the home, you know, if things are very untidy and cluttered, and the child might not seem to be interested in doing a particular activity that's not stimulating or interesting to them. So it seems like a sort of laziness and willful sort of disobedience. But as you just said, Stephanie, like, I think what they really need is to be accepted unconditionally as they are. And there's a sort of phrase of, you know, positive regard that comes from therapy, unconditional positive regard. So it's having that, and that is not a denial of the difficulties, but it's to accept all the facets of your child and not trying to fit them into the box of normal.
Yeah, that's so true. And I'm sure, again, parents would know how that turns out. It never turns out well. It never does. It's really important as a parent with ADHD to also have your own ADHD managed when you're dealing with your child with ADHD, particularly around emotional regulation, because what we've seen in coaching, a lot of parents, when they're maybe spoken to in a way that they feel they shouldn't have been spoken to, or kind of disrespected, their own rejection sensitivity flares up, and they act in a way, they react versus respond in a way that's constructive, and tends to just like fan the flames of the fire. And unfortunately, as we know, sometimes, you know, things can get out of hand, and then we're just reinforcing that negative story that the child will be telling themselves. So we don't want to be doing that. As far as possible, we want to be able to regulate ourselves, hold the space, have that kind of compassion for them, and so that we can keep preserving a more positive story for them. It's not easy. It's not easy to do it on your own, though.
Yeah, and I think also having compassion for yourself, the parent, to not trigger your own rejection sensitivity dysphoria, because at that point you are not able to think in a way that could be helpful to your child, because you're lost in your own story at that point. You're lost in your own vulnerability and anger and shame. And I think it's very useful for the parents as well to have some kind of, perhaps, a self-compassion practice or their own support, because it is really, really difficult, as you just said, you know, having ADHD and having children yourself. I don't have children myself, but I can see from the people that I'm working with and their parents what a challenge it is. And it is very genetically, I think, is it 70%, Stephanie? I'm not sure what the
around that. I mean,
yeah.
it's always increasing. Like
right, okay, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I haven't come across a family where there's just been the child. There's always a parent. It's very, very highly genetic. And what we've found, and also from personal experience, once everyone knows what's going on, right, in terms of, yes, we've got ADHD, you can make sense of why everyone's doing what they do. And then you can work out what everyone's needs are, what the triggers are, try and minimize the triggers, obviously, try and find ways to meet kind of everyone's needs in as less triggerless as possible approach. But that can't always happen. So again, it's about understanding what's achievable and setting expectations, but setting yourself up for success as much as possible. So that's what we do. That's what we do in coaching here at the ADHD Advocates. So if you want any further information on our coaching, do reach out to us. We'll provide our website where you can book a free intro call just in the comments section on this Facebook page. And we'll also provide some links. We've done a few webinars on parenting with ADHD. So we'll send those, put those links there in the comments for you as well. Yeah. Any last words, Matt?
Yeah. I mean, I think the value of ADHD coaching is also that the young person has contact with an external person that isn't in their family, and where the dynamics that would normally be going on, that it's very hard for a young person to listen to certain things, even if they're true, from their parent, as we all know. So having someone coming from the outside where there isn't that kind of emotional history and complications, I think it creates a platform also for the young person to be free to be themselves, and for the coach, if they're a good coach, to accept that person as they are without the kind of pressures and expectations that come with being a person's child. And I think that's where the value is. And I've felt like that the young people have, they have a lot of enthusiasm for just, but it might be the first time in their life that they can be truly themselves with an adult that isn't part of their family. So that's another potential positive.
That is really such an important point. Yeah, you're right. One of the main points, actually, it's having someone outside the family that gets it. Because we do these tell a new story sessions sometimes with teens. It's just a one-off session, and I love them because for the first time sometimes in these children's lives, they're talking to someone that really understands them, and just the way that they open up in that session. And you just, and you can see there's so much misunderstanding there, and then to talk to someone that gets it, that means that this is a thing for them, that acknowledges the challenge, and that it's just legitimizes everything. And just to be able to do that, it's such an honor. So we do offer those telling your story sessions as well, just to help that child, that teen, finally start looking through a different lens and telling a new story. So do get in touch with us. We love to help change their narrative. And tomorrow we'll be talking about GCSEs and A levels academic success. So helping teens succeed academically in this very difficult educational framework. And we found that actually it's at this period, this age setting, that ADHDers need the most help because they can't choose their situation. So they very much need the lens and need some accountability in order to stay on track. So do join us tomorrow at 1 for our live then. But thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
And we'll see you tomorrow.